Okay, welcome to the Science Fiction Podcast. We're going to talk about, in this podcast, we're going to talk about science fiction stuff, everything else in between American Cyborg, maybe Cyborg itself, or maybe The Thing, any science fiction movie that can come to mind. Star Trek, we might talk about. And all in all, would be pretty interesting to talk about. I mean, these are all classic series, movies, TV shows, anything that has to do with science fiction. And we're going to be talking about that as it progresses towards the science fiction aspect of it. So that's what we're going to do with this podcast. And the science fiction aspect of it, we're going to talk about how the actors performed, what they did, how they did it. But I will point out four things. One is how they performed. Two is how they did not perform. Three is how the acting went. So we're going to look at all scenarios. Four would be the entertainment aspect of it. So we're going to look at all scenarios in this sector to where, there is going to be a lot of things going on with the podcast for the most part, and that's going to be a pretty decent look as what the podcast is. That's what we're going to look into, how we're going to look into it, despite the aspect of it. I'll think of a movie, I'll look at it. That's what we're going to do with this podcast, is look at movies but we're not going to watch the movies. We're going to look at them and talk about them, how they performed, what was the idea behind it. So the intent of this podcast would be, what would be the idea behind it? What would be the absolute look of it? There's a lot of disabilities to there. Or they're going to say, there is going to be a possibility that this actor didn't do well, or the play didn't do well. How many takes did they take? In this podcast, it's going to be a little bit tricky, but it's not going to be a little bit hard for the most part. And that's what we're going to look at with the podcast in a couple of hours or so. But first episode is going to be coming up pretty soon. I'm doing this as a primo, as an intro type of thing, to give you a sense of what this podcast is going to be about. It's called the Science Fiction Podcast. We're going to talk about science fiction stuff from Star Troopers, Battlestar Galactica, everything else in between with the podcast scene to this. So if you guys like this episode, the primo to this, the intro to this, let me know in the comments down below. We're going to talk about science fiction movies. I'll come up with the movie names and see what we can get. We might talk about a couple of book writers, like Stephen King, a couple others in between, for obvious reasons. So we're going to talk about them, how they did the movie itself, how they wrote the book. There's going to be a lot of factors to this. So it's going to be like a bonus segment to it, but we're going to be focusing on science fiction. Even if it's episodes from the Twilight Zone, we're going to look at and how they did the acting back then, how they looked at it. The possibilities are endless to that. So if you guys like science fiction stuff, let me know in the comments down below. From that first episode, probably in the next couple days. This is only the primo. So until next time, John Vic signing out. Take care.